There are always claims that education in ancient India was great, but very limited to certain sections of the society, leaving a large part uneducated. What's your take on that? Do you think that might be true? I don't necessarily see that as bad, or even if true. China still does this, which and so on and so forth. Just curious how you think ancient India dealt with education. So there are claims that certain sections of India's in of historians and researchers, they make these claims that India was a very inegalitarian society, unequal society. You had this caste system in India. Arey bhai, caste system, casteism, Brahminical society, Brahminical patriarchy, Brahminical domination, and the evil Brahminical religion, which only gave education to the Brahmins and maybe the Kshatriyas, and everybody else was denied education. Even women were treated horribly in India because India is a terrifyingly patriarchal society, right? So that's what these people claim, and that's what we are taught in our education system. We are taught all of these things as if they were facts. But on what basis do they make these claims? If you make a claim, it has to be on the basis of data, of information. Where is this data? On what basis have they claimed that it's in so and so period of time we had these problems, that India did not denied education to large parts of society and denied education to girls and women? Where is the data that supports this claim? Did they pull this data out of thin air or somewhere else? There is no data that supports these claims that these people make. The only data that is available about not ancient India but more recent India is the data that is available in this book, The Beautiful Tree, by Dharampal. And he meticulously and painstakingly collected all the data that the British themselves had documented. So before the British destroyed India's education system, they spent several decades collecting data about the kind of education system India had, what what kind of education was imparted, what was the demographics that was included in that, and so on and so on, so on and so forth. So according to the data that the British themselves collected before they destroyed India's education system, everybody got an education. The so-called high castes, the so-called low castes, everybody got education in the temple schools. So the place, so India was a land of temples until recently. Today we have other things that are cropping up. Temples, no more new temples are coming up now in India. But India has for thousands of years been a land of temples. Every city, every village, every every street corner had a temple. And temples were not just places of worship, these were centers of education. So in small temples, there is a saying in Tamil that don't go and live in a village where there is no temple, right? So this is not a secular saying, this is a Hindu saying, isn't it? So so what you see is that what was there is that these temples, these were centers of education. That's where all the local kids would go, in the local temple, to gain their basic education. So what they were taught was, they were taught Sanskrit, they were taught the mother tongue, and they were taught basic mathematics and whatever else, right? Uh, whatever other basic topics were taught. So the main basic things, basic education. And if you were good in studies and you wanted to pursue higher education, you would go to one of the great temples. So the great temples were not everywhere, but in every you could say district kind of area, you would have one great temple. So you would go there to receive a higher education, and if you wanted to receive an even higher education, you would go to one of the Mahaviharas or one of the great universities like Nalanda, Takshashila, and so on and so forth. So that's how the system was. India was the most educated land in the world, the most educated culture in the world, right? So according to the statistics the British collected, in which Dharampal has presented, everybody got an education. The so-called high caste, the so-called low castes, boys, girls, everybody got an education. Go buy the book and read it. All right. So that's the only data we have. And the other data, which is like data that comes from foreigners, is the accounts of people like Xuanzang and Fa Hien, etc., the Chinese pilgrims and monks who used to come to India to acquire education, because India was the home of education, right? So they would come to India to acquire knowledge, wisdom, education, and they also observed that everybody was educated, right? You even had female monks and all that. Even in the Vedic times, you had female rishikas. Many of the verses of the Rig Veda itself, the oldest literary text in human history. Many of the verses of the Rig Veda have been composed by females, by ladies. The Rig Veda is the holiest book in what we now call Hinduism. Show me any other religious book in which a significant portion of the text has been composed by women. So all of these claims that these so-called scholars and historians make, these are outright lies and fabrications. So fabrications. Show me the basis on which they make these claims. These are merely opinions. And what they do is this: one person puts forth an opinion without any basis, without any factual basis. Then 15 other people, and this person puts forth the opinion in the form of a paper, a research paper. That paper is published in some journal, even though there is no factual basis to the claim, but they publish it anyway. Then 15 other so-called scholars will cite that paper, that research paper, and write new articles, which all make the same claim. Again, repeat the same claim. So now we have 15 or 16 papers which make the same false claim. Then lots of other people will cite those 15 papers, and they will create a citation ring around that. And so many papers will now, after a few years, be there, which all make the claim, and they cite each other. So they give references to each other, but it all starts with one false claim. And that's how these narratives are constructed in academia. So academia is rotten. Whether it is the West, whether it is in India, whether it's anywhere else, academia is rotten. The entire academic system in the world today is built upon the foundations of the Western system, the Western colonial system that was introduced in India in the 19th century. We still follow the same system today in the 21st century. The same old master's degree in English literature and all that nonsense which people have to go through. So these are all lies and fabrications. Please don't believe them, because there is no factual basis to these claims.